you look at about a 6-week body of work that this staff has put together, and just really proud of the job this staff has done with this class. When you look at the talent, some of the needs that we had from a position standpoint, you look at the students in this group, you look at the people in this group, I think the staff has really done a nice job of putting this group together. But I am really excited to get them here. But the signing day is also the end of recruiting for 2013, and really gives us the opportunity to begin working with our football team, which is one of the things I'm excited about. Recruiting class is important, but having the opportunity to get on the grass with our own football team right now is probably one of the bigger priorities that we have. So it's an exciting day. It's great to be out here, get around a lot of the people for the first time, a lot of the fans here at Louisiana Tech, and have an opportunity to interact with them. But overall, just a very fulfilling day, but also a very rewarding day at the same time. What questions?
Coach, talk about the city of New Orleans and how it was being down there recruiting, and with Coach Jaluk. I know we talked about that the other day, but you got a late start down there.
Right.
How was it building those relationships with the help of Coach Jaluk?
Coach Jaluk has done a phenomenal job down there, and you look at, I believe Carlos Henderson was the signee from down there in the New Orleans area that I think is a dynamic, exciting, wide open wide receiver that has a chance to come in and be a real difference maker in this program with what we're doing as an offense. And I think Coach Jaluk opened a lot of doors for us down there, but it's not just the ones that we signed, but you look at the battles that we were in recruiting and who we lost some of the people to. Those are the type of people we want to compete with in recruiting. And I think he did an excellent job of opening doors, of getting us into homes, and really to continue to expand on the contacts that we have down in the New Orleans area. So I think he did a great job for his first year recruiting. I think there were some bumps along the way. I think he learned some things, and you get a commitment and then somebody else will come in and take them from you. And Jabbar's like, I'm not taking that. I'm going back into that home. It's like, slow down, slow down. Extremely competitive, but I think he's a huge addition to the staff.
It's hard not to think about him having a full year to recruit down there, isn't it?
It is. I mean, especially when he just walked in there and was able to get in some of the doors that he was. But I think that's because of the contacts that he has, because of the respect that people have for him, and the great job that he has done at Carr High School. I think he's a phenomenal person, and you have an opportunity to get around him. You can see why he's so special and why people have such a high opinion of him.
Coach, there was one transfer that kid from LSU, Paul Turner.
Yes.
Of course, you're very familiar with him around here. I guess it fits a need for you and also a playmaker.
I tell you, Paul Turner is a dynamic, exciting, electric player. And when you look at what we had talked about with that I-20 corridor and having a guy like Paul Turner transfer in from LSU, who I think has a chance to come in and, again, be really a special player and as an elite athlete, along with Xavier Woods as a freshman coming in. But I think those two from West Monroe High School are two huge additions, and I think that's part of, hopefully, the beginning of building a bridge from here to Monroe with some of the great programs that are over in that area.
When you look at Trent Taylor on tape, what stood out the most?
Just his playmaking ability. I mean, you look at Trent Taylor, it's not about his size, it's not that he's 6'3" or that he weighs 240 pounds, but it's his heart. It's the energy that he plays with, the passion, the attitude that we talked a little bit about that he plays with. I think he's a great competitor, and when you watch his highlight film, it's really rather impressive. You look at what that team was able to do with him as one of the leaders. Hopefully we can continue to make those strides as a college program as well.
You talked about that I-10 corridor. Explain how important it is and what it will mean for your school to be able to secure it.
The I-10 or I-20?
The I-10.
Go on the southern part of the state. Well, and that's why there's a lot of great football that's played on the I-10 corridor from New Orleans to Baton Rouge, and it's where the largest population mass is. We have said that the I-20, the northern part of the state, has to be the first spot that we really dig our heels in, but then we have got to get into the I-10 corridor and the population mass and the great programs in the Baton Rouge, Lafayette, and New Orleans area, and that's one of the reasons that a guy like Jabbar Jaluk, was so attractive, is because of the inroads that he gives you in southern Louisiana just because of the success that he's had in a high school program down there.
Coach, position-wise, what did you feel like he shored up or helped?
Well, we needed offensive linemen. I mean, and you look at, I believe there were 10 junior college players in this class. And when you look at, there's 2 offensive linemen. I've always said that anytime you take junior college players, you need to try and take high school players with them. And you look at the 2 offensive linemen, the junior college players, you're going to look for immediate help from them. There were 2 wide receiver junior college players or transfers with Paul Turner and Kevin Gary. And then you had 1 defensive lineman. You had 2 in the secondary, 2 safeties in the secondary, but the biggest need's the 3 at linebacker, which is where I think the biggest need for next year could make a difference. One of the things we talked about, especially late, was that if we didn't feel a young man could come in and help this football team next year, then right now let's hold that scholarship. Because right now there's not a lot of those to go around. And so let's make sure, when I would rather sign a young man in Christmas a year from now that has the chance when we have a year to recruit them, than I would just go and give them out this year just to say that we gave them out, and then you're out recruiting a young man.
Coach,
So I was going to say the junior college players are the biggest ones, but there are other freshmen that are going to have an opportunity to make an impact on this team.
High school linebackers, that's really where you were in the biggest recruiting battles. You missed out on a few.
Yes.
Does that hurt the class at all?
Well, the class isn't over. That's why I said, I mean, that's why we've saved a number of scholarships, because there's always some that show up late that you have the opportunity to take. And it is probably the thing that is the biggest, probably the one thing that I'd like to change is be able to close a couple of those high school linebackers out at the end, because if we could have, I would have liked to take 2 more high school linebackers. We just weren't able to close them out in the short period of time that we had from a recruiting standpoint.
You knew the positions you had need at, but you talked about not knowing exactly what you had already. Do you just like the best player? What's the strategy?
The numbers. I mean, there's a whole formula to our numbers. How many offensive linemen you'd like on scholarship, how many linebackers. So it wasn't so much based on playing need as much as it was based on where we have our numbers, because it's very difficult right now for us to identify what all the strengths and weaknesses of this football team are. And that's one of the hard things and one of the hard adjustments about walking into a program in your first year, is having to be able to evaluate your team where we haven't had a chance to practice with them at all, but yet you're sitting in a living room recruiting young men. And that's one of the hard things that people talk about in a transition year, and that's why a transition year is so difficult.
How, and this is a tough question maybe to answer, how many of the first-year true freshmen possibly could start or play a lot?
Again, it's very hard for me. I can tell you there's some very talented freshmen that I think are going to have a chance to come in and compete. But I've always said that freshmen play because upperclassmen give them the opportunity to, that I will have a much better feel to that question when I come out of spring ball, which are some of the objectives that we have going into spring ball, is to find out how many starters we have. And everybody says, well, that's foolish. You know you have 11. Well, I mean, we need to find out how many we have on our team. We know we have to start 11, but I don't know how many we have on our team right now on the offensive and defensive side, and that's all going to be about a level of competition. And so that's one of the things that I'm so excited about going into spring ball.
Coach, this is your 3rd stop as a head coach. First quarter system, was it an easy sell to kids to sell the quarter system as opposed to the semester system?
4th stop, but that's okay.
4th stop.
4th stop. But yeah, it really was. It was a very easy sale. When I've never been around the quarter system, but when you look, it's not just being on the quarter system, but it's also being in the semester hour system. And so when you look at it, I think it's a great opportunity for a young man who doesn't have to load up to take 12 to 15 hours during the fall. And I think when you look at our graduation rate being one of the top 30 in the country, I think one of the reasons for that is not only the great faculty and the job that they've done and the quality of character of the young men and what they're doing academically, but I do think that the quarter system is something that's very beneficial for the student athletes, not just football players, but for student athletes across the board, to have those 3 quarters along with the summer, rather than just the 2 semesters, which I think is very beneficial.
Anyone else?
Was there anybody in the class you felt like was a real gem? A couple of guys that you feel really good about coming in?
Well, you know what? There's a lot of them I feel good about. I could go through almost every player and talk about strengths and what we really liked about each one. There's probably some that are more ready to play than others. I was really impressed with, obviously, the two young men from Monroe that we talked about. Really impressed with Eddie Johnson, who is the quote really only tight end we have on this football team right now at about 6'3", 6'4", about 235, who I think is going to give some flexibility. I think a guy like that is an opportunity to play just because there's nobody in front of him right now. Right. You know, he's walking to the front of the line just by coming into campus. And so I think it's going to be as much about the opportunity that some of the upperclassmen give here as it is the younger players, because there's a lot of talent in this young class, and I'm excited to see what they can do on the field. And I'll make the decision in who will redshirt and who will play once we come out, after we're in fall camp for about a week to 10 days. Then that's when we'll start to make our decisions predicated on kind of how they come in, how they pick up the system, how ready they are to play physically, because we still have a lot of time between now and August 4th when this team is going to report.